and welcome to Discuss Nigeria and African Free Press Television. My name is Leo Oketa. Like I used to say, it's very interesting talking about issues that come up in this country because they can really take you a long way. Today we'll be looking at a very critical issue that developed on Saturday. Talk about the judgment of the Election Petition Tribunal of the Taraba gubernatorial election, where the governor, Darius Ishaku, was asked to pack, and then had the lady Achia Al-Hassan asked to get into the government by the tribunal. And today, to take on these issues in the studio with me today is Mr. Emeka Emmanson Okoroafor, who is a legal practitioner here in Abuja.
Thank you very much.
And quite interestingly, to balance the equation is Ms. Chioma Ikejiani, who is a publisher of Amoy magazine. You're welcome to the show as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we're going to look at it a couple of ways. We're going to go legal, we're going to go political, and because you're here, it's going to be very interesting because you have a lady going in as the first governor in Nigeria, the first female governor. So we're going to ask you certain questions, how interesting this has been for you, coming from the feminist perspective. So let me start with you, Barrister Emeka. What do you make of the judgment by the tribunal on Saturday?
Okay, I think the judgment is plausible. It's a very novel. It's novel and it's legally defensible by all standards. I think it's a very good development for the legal and electoral jurisprudence.
And what is the provision of the Constitution on that? Because you have people saying the tribunal should have instead called for a re-election instead of nullifying and then giving the votes to Aisha Al-Hassan to go in as the governor. What does the Constitution provide in respect to that?
Now, the Electoral Act, in perspective, has actually drawn remedies to circumstances like this. Now, Section 140 guides us in this perspective. Section 140 says, if I may quote, let me read it.
Okay.
Section 140 of the Electoral Act. Section 140, sub 2 says, where an election tribunal or court nullifies an election on the ground that the person who obtained the highest votes at the election was not qualified to contest the election tribunal or court shall not declare the person with the second highest votes as elected, but shall order a fresh election. Now, a lot of people had based the argument based on this, that if the tribunal in its own wisdom found that the PDP candidate was not qualified at the time of the election to have contested, that the proper order the election tribunal should have made was a fresh rerun. But I, in my own wisdom, I have said no, that the tribunal was right to have declared the second, the candidate of the APC as the highest, and thereafter the winner, based on subsection 3 of that same 140, which has gone to say that if the tribunal or the court determines that a candidate who was returned as elected was not validly elected on the ground that he did not score the majority of valid votes cast at the election tribunal or the court, as the case may be, shall declare as elected the candidate who scored the highest number of valid votes cast at the election and satisfy the requirements of the Constitution and this Act. Now, what this section is saying, like, the judgment says that the PDP candidate, in the eye of the law, did not even contest the election because PDP did not field a qualified candidate, and PDP did not subscribe itself to the requirements before the election should have come up. Now, this subsection 2 would have been permissible if PDP had, if the question was just on the qualification of the person of Darius Ishaku, the PDP candidate. Now the tribunal says the PDP did not even participate, which makes it permissible to say that they were right based on subsection 3. Because if you're saying PDP did not participate, that means the votes PDP got was null and void, invalid, in the eye of the law, no votes. Now, what is sub 3 saying? Sub 3 is saying that if I may recap, that if the tribunal or the court determines that a candidate who was returned as elected was not validly elected on the ground that he did not score the majority of valid votes, what does that judgment mean? That the PDP candidate, PDP as a party, having not participated, did not get the valid number of highest votes scored. Therefore, it means that the second person who scored, in actual sense, scored the highest number of votes, and they were right to have declared her the winner of the election based on subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, section 140.
Because her votes were qualified.
Yes, because she got the highest number of votes.
Now, let me take it from this perspective. You know, when it comes to the Nigerian Constitution, part of the problems we encounter is when you come to the interpretation of the law. Now, this has drawn us into jurisprudence, philosophy of law. Where do we take? Now, let me get down to the basics where it all started. You look at the INEC as the umpires, like the umpire in this election. Now, they should have been the ones to get the parties, the candidates, ready for the election. Does it mean that this has been pre-planned? They left it, they just volitionally, intentionally left the PDP to present themselves that way, because I still see from the functions of the INEC, they should be the ones to get these elections ready. Does it mean that they left the PDP that way, knowing fully well that when they get to this stage, whichever way, they will be ready for them? Do we see INEC tilting towards?
No, I really do not think it's the making of INEC. PDP, from history, if we go down memory lane, is used to this type of practice. It's unfortunate that they are caught up with this based on the fact that they are no longer at the helm of affairs. If they were, maybe he would have succeeded. The law wouldn't have caught up with him. Now that they are not there, and this is an opportunity for us to test everything they've been doing according to law, and their practice and act has failed the legal test. If we can recall, a similar thing happened to Honorable Rotimi Amechi when he won the primaries, and for obvious reasons, the party substituted him for Celestine Omehi, and he went to the court, and Supreme Court said no, he was the validly elected party flag bearer. It equally happened in Imo State as to Charles Sogu and Ararume. Ararume won the primaries, and the party swapped, and the Supreme Court, the court said no, that Ararume was the validly nominated candidate for PDP. Now, similar thing has just happened here. For obvious reasons, they did not keep to the rules of the game, and they have been caught up with. I do not think the INEC is to be blamed. It's supposed to be, in actual sense, the affairs of the party. But in being the affairs of the party, there are also laid down procedures.
Now, I just want to throw a straightforward question. Whose function is it to determine who is qualified and who is not qualified?
Okay. Now, there are guidelines already by the Electoral Act to determine who is validly nominated, and where there are set rules, you must follow those rules. I don't think it's the responsibility of the umpire, the INEC, is to make sure that the elections, if we go by the functions, let me read section 2 of the Electoral Act. The specific function of the INEC is to conduct voter and civic education, promote knowledge of sound democratic election processes, conduct any referendum required to be conducted pursuant to the provision of 1999 Constitution or any other law or act of the National Assembly. These specific functions of, and if I go by the Constitution, section 153 also, section 153.
What he's looking for, what I think he's trying to say? I think what he's basically trying to say is that INEC as an umpire has the fiduciary duty to run an election.
Exactly.
Now, when that election is run, and whoever is declared a winner is the winner at that time. If there is any other misguidance, or if anybody feels that they've been taken out of not participating, then that's when the law comes into the case, right?
Yes,
and then
exactly.
there's other procedures in law. I think that's what I
Exactly.
From your perspective.
from a gender perspective.
Exactly.
From a gender advocacy
gender,
perspective, I am giddy with
gender
happiness.
sensitive station. This is the gender sensitive
Absolutely.
program. So, from your perspective, how do you see? I know you're already bubbling. You're already
Well, you know
buzzing.
what? You know, it's really
the first
interesting.
female governor. How do you feel about
I
it?
am giddy because I think this speaks volumes. I think this is what women in Nigeria have been waiting for. And I think this goes beyond Nigeria. I think this hits Africa. And I think to a certain extent, the whole issue of gender sensitivity is a global issue. And I think this is a very good thing for Nigeria. Because from a global perspective, it hits North America, it hits Europe, and it hits Africa. So I think that this stands Nigeria in a very good footing. Number one. Number two, what I'm so excited about is the little kids, the little girls that are watching this, that are going to be inspired. For the very first time, a woman in the history of Nigeria can hold her head up and say, you know what, I made it, I fought hard, it was difficult, but I got here. And guess what, there were a lot of men that were supporting her. So let's just actually thank the men that supported her, because women can't do this alone. Politics is still in Nigeria a man's field. And I really have to clap my hand for the men that supported her. So I'm very giddy.
All right, if you've been watching, we've been discussing Nigerian African Free Press Television, and today we've been taking on an important development in the country, the judgment of the Election Petition Tribunal of the Taraba gubernatorial election. Now, let me start with you again, Chioma. You know, you've been in Canada for a while, and sometimes when you go out there, it's always a different scenario, because you just hear from the media. And it's the media, whatever the media says, sometimes clouds your understanding about what is happening in Nigeria. And now you've come down. How do you see, is there a difference between how people react over there regarding issues here, or is it the same thing that you've experienced since you came back?
Are you talking about the gender thing,
Yeah.
or just everything
The
in
gender
general?
thing,
Well,
and then
you know what,
everything
I'll give you
in
an
general.
example. When I was coming to, I came here in 2009. Dora Akunyele brought me back, and then I went back to went back to Canada. It's really interesting because this time when I came back in 2014, I came on a vacation.
Oh.
First of all, everybody was saying, you're going to Nigeria on a vacation? Well, yeah, of course, I'm going to Nigeria on a vacation. So the most simplest example I can give you for this is when you're traveling outside the country, you get shots, right? So this is how bad it's gotten, the image of Nigeria in other parts of the country. So the nurse that is giving me my shots, she now said to me, you know what, you're going to have to be very careful. You cannot put your feet in water because you may get some typhoid.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, is this the same Nigeria that I went to? You can't really go and get your manicure because you may get AIDS, because we've had cases in Africa. So I'm just,
Is
we
it that
haven't
bad,
even,
actually?
I'm telling you what I've experienced. So, and I say to myself, and I'm listening to the nurse, and I'm saying, is this the same Nigeria that I was in 2009, 2010? Is it really that bad? So we have a lot to overcome in terms of branding Nigeria, and I still think it's negative. A lot of my business partners, so I'm telling you from a social perspective, let's now look at the business part of it. A lot of my business partners says, what are you going to do in Nigeria? I heard you're coming back, right? You're going on vacation. So when I came here, I fell in love with Nigeria. I haven't been back. I came here May 2014, and I'm not going back. And people look at me and they say, I don't understand. Oh, there's so many opportunities in Canada. Canada is overdeveloped. And I always say to people, if you want Rick's aversion, go back to Canada. If you want to make your mark, and if you want to contribute to Nigeria, stay back home. And the elephant here in the big room that we don't talk about is racism. There is huge racism, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in US. I lived there when I was a little baby. I grew up, and you really got to be good. You really got to be good to get deals and to get contracts. When I come to Nigeria, it is based on my merit.
Yeah.
It is based on my business acumen. It is not based on the fact that because I'm black, you know what, I'm not going to give this business to you because you're black. That was one thing that I do not have to deal with when I'm in Nigeria.
So in a nutshell, you're glad to be back.
In a nutshell, I feel privileged
Okay.
that I have a Nigerian passport, that I call Nigeria my home.
Okay, that's very interesting to hear. Now, let's not get too away, because she's very, very happy.
That was
like
emotional.
having that was very.
The way she climaxed, I feel privileged.
Let's not get away from the actual thing we're talking about. You're welcome, actually. Now, Mr. Emeka, I would have to go back to you. We have so many people arguing about this, and sometimes it's not just. They look at the constitution, the whole stuff in there, that's fine. But sometimes they still look at the strings of cases coming around, talk of coming from a political perspective. You have like the APC-led government cracking down on the PDP, talk of the River State judgment, you talk of the Akwa Ibom state government judgment, this one now. And then, other occasions where you have some of those involved being dragged to the EFCC, but none from the APC going to the EFCC. How, in your thing, sincerely speaking, from a neutral perspective, do you think they are abusing the power?
I thank you for that question. Honestly, I do not think they are abusing the power. As much as we may want to, give a political coloration to all this, only the truth will stand. Only the truth can always stand the test of time. If we go back to memory lane of what happened in River State during election, the question we should ask ourselves, was there no violence in River State? And a lot of the news, a lot of the television stations actually carried live images during and after, even before, during and after the election. We heard of the situation. I watched it on Channels TV, and we saw a situation where INEC office was bombed in Rivers.
Yeah.
Some channel staffs were killed and injured. The police, the edge of police was asked to go back to Cross River, Ogunsakin, the edge of police. And I come to ask myself this question: that when we will get away from the point of sentiment where we try to drag in, do a lot of Muslim slinging and, give it a political coloration instead of looking at it on its, on its merit. Truth, there was no election in River State. So I would have been shocked, I would have been surprised if the election tribunal did not nullify the election in River State. That's the truth. So I do not see, as much as people have tried to argue that they, based on the fact that they brought the tribunal in Abuja, and there are a lot of political interference, I keep asking them, when was the tribunal moved to Abuja? If I can remember vividly, that of River State, we can see it on a lot of newspapers if you go to the archives. The election tribunal moved on 15th of April 2015. And on that date, they've not even sworn in the APC federal government. The PDP was still at the helm of affairs. The president was still at the, former President Jonathan. So for whatever reasons they had then, they moved it. I would be safe to say that they moved it to Abuja. So is it now that is, the things are kind of turning against them? They're trying to say, it's being manipulated by the APC. I don't know if you understand.
Yeah, obviously, I get that. Let me come down to you very quickly on this one.
Sorry. The second leg of your question is in respect of dragging some politicians belonging to the PDP to court or EFCC. And I say, if you say you did not do anything wrong, why are you afraid? You go to the court and defend yourself, and if the court finds the case of the EFCC a hopeless one, you go free. People are so scared of.
Believe me, you don't want us to go back into the political issue, because we could still raise the issue of the Senate President, who is an APC member, and just all of a sudden became an issue like a thorn on their flesh, because he was not tuning into what they wanted. Obviously, we don't want to get into that, believe me, because it's another whole lot of stuff. But I want really to come down to you on talking of our economy policies. You've been out there and you've had experiences. Now, the presidency issued a statement saying the ministers will be sworn in on Wednesday. What hope do you think these developments have for us?
I'm working on something looking at sectors that are driving the economy. So I've gone to a lot of the sectors like agriculture, solid minerals, anything, FIRS. I think what the ministers have to look at when they go in is that they have to look at the policies and the regulations that are there right now and see whether those policies and reforms are being implemented. Because you know what happens in Nigeria? We are so good with policies. We're so good with the law. But the problem is the implementation.
Yeah.
And I think that for the very first time, I think in the history since independence, if we can, and I'm really giving a lot of hope to the ministers, because when we heard them being screened, a lot of them spoke very well. A lot of them had
quite a number of them.
That they know their onions and they're driven. There's a lot at stake, both domestic and international communities looking at us. If we cannot afford to fail, we cannot. That's the reality of the situations. And so for me, when I'm looking at all these sectors, I'm saying to myself, those ministers have to be ready to implement. The other thing that I'm going to mention here is I think the whole issue of work ethic has got to come into play. We don't talk about it, but it's a huge issue.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How effective is those workers that are civil servants? How efficient are they? Are they happy at their job? Are they happy at what they're doing? Are they part of growing this economy? What part do they play? Because they are the barracks, they remain, right? So these are the things for me. I think that there should be a retreat for those for those workers, because without them, we cannot be an island on our own. So that's my hope. Implementation is key. They've got to make sure that the reforms that are there have to be implemented, because if they're not implemented, we're back to square one. And I don't think that's what the president wants. I think he wants to make an impact. I think he believes in Nigeria like we all do, So that's what I have for the ministers. They've got to implement, because without implementation, we don't have anything.
All right, last word from you just before we close the curtain for the day. Last word on what you have about your expectations from this present government.
Well, let me first of all say that I have a lot of belief in this present government, and I so much believe that he's going to perform. In fact, the threat of it already, he has already set the ball rolling. And as much as people say, oh, he's slow, but I keep telling people, this is just 5 months. We got to give this man a chance. We have to cut him some slack. We keep referring to countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and none of those things we refer to come easily. It's only a madman that can continue to do something repeatedly the same time and expect a different result. So if we are saying he must do it the way the previous government have been doing it, that means we are not ready to, make this country work. We must have to do it a different way. And I think that's what he is doing, and I think he is doing it well.
And your last word on that, Chioma, what do you have to say on your expectations from the government, generally speaking?
I think that, a lot of us prayed when we did the election. because there was a lot of negativity from the international community that Nigeria was going to break out. And there was a lot of prayer. And I'm just going to continue to appeal to Nigerians to be patient and to continue with their steadfast prayerfulness, because Nigeria is just one of those prayer warrior countries, and that's another reason I'm back. And I just think that you know, this is a really good time to be in Nigeria, because if you have an idea and if you're willing to work, Nigeria is the place to be. It is the largest economy in Africa, and we should be proud. And so I think that we have so much to work on, and this is why it's either now or never.
All right, it's either now or never. That's her word. And we've been discussing Nigerian African Free Press Television. Since it's discussed Nigeria, we started with a very important issue, the election petition tribunal of the Taraba gubernatorial election. That's the judgment that was upheld in favor of Aisha Al-Hassan on Saturday. We probably came down to some other issues, talk about how the female folk feel about
Yes.
their person being the first female governor in Nigeria. But I must not fail to thank them today. They've been wonderful on my show today. Talk of Mr. Emeka Okoroafor, who is a legal practitioner here in Abuja, and Chioma Ikejiani, who is a publisher of Amoy magazine. Thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For more of these, please do visit our website at www.africanfreepress.com. You can as well follow us on Twitter at African Free Press, like our Facebook page at africanfreepress.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at African Free Press. From me, Leo Oketa, and the whole team in the studio, it's see you next time.